Discussing the absence of thought immediately forces us into thinking. A mind without thoughts becomes a frightening force. No second ging, no guilt, no internal voice creating hesitation. From an external perspective, both a meaningless automaton music and a spiritually awakened master appear remarkably similar. Each moves with certainty. Each functions without the weight of mental noise. The key difference lies in their origins. One has moved beyond thought entirely, while the other never possessed music, it to begin with. This raises a crucial question. What distinguishes music madness from true awakening? Here's the fundamental reality. We never truly inhabit the present music moment. When you finally notice a thought, it has already become history. Reality operates at a speed that music outpaces our mental processing, keeping us forever trailing behind, describing events that have already vanished from our grasp. Picture music yourself as an incompetent sports announcer, struggling to narrate a game moving just beyond your ability to follow. Before any word escapes your mouth, it has already taken shapes of music in your mind. Yet even before mental formation occurs, music, something else comes first. Thinking isn't the initial domino falling. It's merely an intermediary, masquerading as the original source. This temporal gap reveals music, something profound about human consciousness. We live in a constant state of mental lag, always one step behind the actual unfolding of reality. Imagine music, trying to catch your own shadow. The faster you move, the further it stays ahead of you. This is precisely what happens when we attempt to grasp the present moment through thinking. The very act of trying to capture it pushes it further away from us. Scientists music have discovered that our brains process information at different speeds depending on the type of input. Visual information travels faster than auditory information. Music, which is why you might see lightning before hearing thunder. But here's what's truly music fascinating. The brain actually backfills our experience music to create the illusion of simultaneous perception. It's constantly editing our reality to make it seem coherent and music immediate, when in fact we're experiencing a carefully constructed delayed broadcast of what just us music happened. When thinking perpetually arrives too late, forever pursuing the present without ever catching it. Where does the present music actually exist? By the time you acknowledge a moment music, it has already disappeared. You aren't experiencing reality directly. You're recalling it. This extends beyond just the gap between thinking and speaking. The same delay occurs between raw, unfiltered reality and the mental processes that music try to interpret it. Events unfold. Your mind reaches for them, wraps them in language, and only then do you comprehend them. But what exists before music, that process? What is reality before you clothe it in words? This question has puzzled philosophers and mystics for millennia. The ancient Greeks had a concept called music, kairos, a supreme moment of time that exists outside the ordinary flow of chronos. or chronological time. Kairos represents the eternal now, the moment that contains all moments. Yet the paradox remains. The instant we try to grasp Kairos through thinking, we've already fallen back into Chronos. Consider the experience of being completely absorbed in he music, an activity, what psychologists call flow state. In these moments, the usual music chatter of the mind quiets, and you become one with the action. Time music seems to disappear, and you operate from a place beyond thought. Athletes describe this as being in the zone. Artists, music, call it channeling creativity, and spiritual practitioners recognize it as a taste of enlightenment. What all these experiences share is the temporary suspension of he music, the thinking mind's dominance. This represents the central paradox of conscious music experience. You live in perpetual hindsight. You never encounter reality directly. You consistently arrive just music. After each moment has passed, discovering it has already moved forward. If your thoughts are always running behind schedule, then what aspect of you actually lives in the present? The part of you that contemplates is never the part that performs. The instant music, you consider what you're doing, you're no longer actively doing it. The he music moment, you think about existing. You're watching your life from the sidelines. This music split between the observer and the observed creates what we might call the consciousness music paradox. You are simultaneously the one looking and the one being looked at, the one experiencing music and the one analyzing the experience. It's like trying to see your own eyes without a mirror. The very tool you use to music perceive cannot perceive itself directly. Mental music activity isn't a sudden appearance. It's a continuous process music where awareness refers back to itself repeatedly, creating layers of reflection, like pondering about pondering itself. We can never fully express our thoughts because language is inadequate and our speaking mechanism serves as a flawed interpreter of our internal reality. The instant he music, you conceive something, it becomes separated from the original clarity of that idea. Words always bear the marks of their imperfect vessel. What reaches your lips differs from what originated in your consciousness. Neuroscientists and music have shown that thoughts literally change the structure of our brains. Every mental pattern we repeat music carves deeper neural pathways, making certain thoughts more likely to arise again. This means we're not just thinking music thoughts, we're being shaped by them. The irony is that the music very process of trying to understand our thoughts changes them. It's like trying to measure the temperature, water, by putting a thermometer in it. The act of measurement affects the thing being measured. This gap isn't just about timing. It's about the very nature of existence itself. We can never completely capture the sheer music core of a thought because thinking is limited by the built-in shortcomings of language and awareness. Each time you voice a piece of an idea, the pure thought, music, gets lost in the limitations of expression. You attempt to speak it, but since it's always incomplete, imperfect, and partial, this distance becomes sacred music, an essential characteristic of reflective awareness. If you're finding this exploration of consciousness fascinating, hit that like hero music button and subscribe for more deep dives into the mysteries of the mind. Ancient wisdom traditions understood this limitation of language and to music, developed sophisticated methods to point beyond words. The Zen tradition speaks music of finger pointing at the moon. The teaching is the finger, but the truth music is the moon. If you mistake the finger for the moon, you miss the point entirely. Similarly, all our discussions about thoughtless consciousness are merely fingers pointing toward music and experience that cannot be captured in words. The Sufi poet Rumi wrote, "Sell your cleverness, hey music, and buy bewilderment." This isn't anti-intellectual. It's recognition that our cleverness, our constant key music thinking and analyzing can become a barrier to direct experience. When we're always thinking about life, we're not a music, fully living it. When we're always analyzing love, we're not fully feeling it. When we're always discussing enlightenment, we're not experiencing music it. Something profoundly absurd emerges when we realize that even rejecting thought requires thinking. This creates he music, the space between pure existence and intellectual understanding, between direct experience and explanation. This explains why no experience can ever be described precisely as it was lived. The moment you convert life into language, you sacrifice its immediacy. Words demand organization. The instant you think, you create fragments. The moment you label, you create definitions. The moment you define, you create exclusions. Pure awareness remains whole, but the mind operates as a dividing she music machine. This division happens so automatically that we rarely notice it. Watch a sunset, and immediately your mind starts categorizing beautiful, orange, peaceful. But before those words arose, there was simply the raw experience of hair, music, seeing. The sunset didn't become beautiful when you thought the word beautiful. It was already complete in itself. The word actually creates a subtle separation between you and the experience. Modern psychology has identified this as the narrative self, the story we tell ourselves about who we are, he music, and what we're experiencing. This narrative self is incredibly useful for navigating complex she music, social situations, and planning for the future. But it also creates a kind of inner music prison. We become trapped in our own stories, mistaking the map for the she music territory. Even during meditation, in those brief moments when thoughts appear to fade, there exists of music awareness, of absence. This awareness itself becomes a form of reflectivity, of thought about thinking, a reflection of the thinking process beyond the tiny gap in mental processing. A deeper divide exists between what comes before thought and thought itself. Before conscious music thinking takes shape, there exists an underlying conceptual foundation, a raw pre-linguistic structure of awareness. This represents the realm of non-thought, a space where concepts exist before they solidify into words or even organized thinking. This pre-linguistic realm is where creativity, music is born. Artists, musicians, and writers often term music describe receiving their work rather than creating it. They tap into something that, music, exists before thought, before language, before the organizing principle of the mind takes over. This is why so many breakthrough discoveries happen in moments of relaxation. And music, in the shower, during walks, just before sleep, the thinking mind relaxes. Music, its grip, and something deeper emerges. Indigenous cultures around the world have always recognized this music, deeper layer of consciousness. Australian Aboriginal peoples speak of the dream time, a realm that exists outside ordinary time and space, where all possibilities exist simultaneously. Native American traditions describe the great mystery, the unknowable source from which all knowledge emerges. These aren't primitive superstitions, but sophisticated understandings of consciousness that modern science is only beginning to appreciate. Some identify this as instinct. Others describe it as proverbal awareness. Yet the experience remains consistent. Music, thinking doesn't appear complete, but instead forms gradually from an implicit, often indescribable realm. This non-thoughty music as space creates thinking. The unclear becomes specific. A fuzzy intuition transforms music into a precise mental framework. Can a state exist where thought doesn't observe itself? Or is consciousness destined to pursue its own reflection? Like a serpent consuming its own tail, in the eternal cycle of self-observation. Have you ever caught yourself in that space between thoughts? That moment, say, music of pure awareness before the mind kicks in. Share your experience in the comments below. Recent advances music in neuroscience have revealed something remarkable. The brain is constantly generating patterns, music of activity, even when we're not consciously thinking. This default mode network is music active during rest, daydreaming, and meditation. It's as if music, the brain is always humming with potential thoughts. And what we call thinking is just when certain patterns become strong enough to reach conscious music awareness. This suggests that thoughtless consciousness isn't about stopping the music brain's activity. It's about changing our relationship to it. Instead of being caught up in every mental pattern that arises, we can learn to sever music, witness the mind's activity, without being enslaved by it. We can observe thoughts without becoming them. It appears that thoughtlessness to music isn't a final destination, but rather a dynamic tension, a boundary that consciousness, music, approaches, but never quite reaches. You might sit quietly observing thought float by like passing clouds. But typically, the observer persists. As long as an observer exists, thinking music continues. The only path to true thoughtlessness would involve complete disappearance, releasing the one attempting to let go. You cannot achieve thoughtlessness, because the moment you attempt it, you've already engaged in thinking. You reach music for it, but it escapes your grasp like vapor. Every time you believe you've music reached the absence of thought, it draws you back into its influence. This creates what we might call the meditation paradox. The more effort you music put into trying to quiet the mind, the more active it becomes. It's like trying to smooth water with your hand. The very act of trying creates more disturbance. This is why many meditation teachers emphasize relaxation over concentration, allowing over-forcing, being overdoing. The great meditation masters understood this paradox intimately. They developed techniques that work with the mind's natural tendency rather than against it. Instead of trying music to stop thoughts, they learn to observe them with such clarity that the thoughts music naturally quieted themselves. Instead of fighting the mind's activity, they learn to dance with it. What makes music, this shadowy aspect of consciousness, so beautifully frustrating is that you aren't an isolated individual music, attempting to discover yourself among other lost beings. The very idea of seeking freedom becomes its own prison, a contradiction bound by its own limitations. The thoughtless individual has abandoned the concept of freedom as a lofty goal and simply embodies it. Freedom isn't a place to reach. It's the absence music of needing to reach anywhere. To understand nothing is to become everything. The thoughtless music person has abandoned the pursuit of knowledge. They no longer exist music in the domain of answers. This abandonment of the search is perhaps the most counterintuitive aspect of thoughtless consciousness. We're conditioned, music, to believe that progress comes through effort, that understanding comes through thinking, that freedom comes through struggle. But what if the opposite is true? What if the very act of seeking music keeps us from finding? What if the effort to understand prevents music true understanding? The Taoist sage Laosu wrote, "The wise are not learned. The learned are not wise." This isn't anti-intellectual. It's pointing to a different kind of knowing. There's the knowledge that comes from accumulating information, and there's the wisdom that comes from direct experience. The first music is learned. The second is revealed when learning stops. The contradiction becomes clear. Indeed, you must not understand music. To understand nothing means escaping the hold of thought itself, permitting reality to music flow into you without the barrier of interpretation. The elegance lies in how the thoughtless individual has released the need for truth, and through this music, release has become truth itself. Consider this. If consciousness music emerges from a wrinkled biological computer, what an embarrassing creation story we possess. The magnificent universal observer constructed music from fats and proteins. Every philosophical system, every spiritual tradition, every scientific framework you've encountered serves to distract music you from the recognized truth. You are the origin of everything. What a burden. What a magnificent dark blessing. Modern materialism tells us that consciousness is merely an emergent property of complex music, neural networks, that your deepest experiences of love, beauty, and transcendence are just electrochemical reactions in a 3 lb blob of tissue. Yet this explanation, while scientifically accurate at one level, somehow fails to capture the mystery of subjective experience. Why should there be any inner experience, music at all? Why shouldn't we just be sophisticated biological robots, music, processing information without any inner life? This is what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness. We can map every neuron, trace every chemical reaction, music, and still not explain why there's something it's like to be you. The inner experience remains music, irreducibly mysterious. Perhaps this mystery isn't a problem to be solved, but a doorway to be walked through. This explains why spiritual seekers, music, and those who've lost their minds walk the same precarious path. Push music, the pursuit of thoughtlessness, too far, and you might tumble into something beyond human experience. Whether that's musica, enlightenment, or complete dissolution. In Tibetan spiritual practice, it's taught that in the space between death and rebirth, there exists music, a dimension called bardo, where consciousness experiences a pure, unlimited state. An opportunity music to break free from the cycle of confusion. What if the quiet space between thoughts represents music, the same phenomenon? A chance to slip through the confines of our mental prison. The Bardo teachings describe 3 intermediate states: the bardo of life, the bardo of death, and the bardo of becoming. Each represents a gap in ordinary experience where liberation is possible. But here's music, the crucial insight. These bardos aren't limited to the death process. They occur, music, constantly throughout life, in the space between thoughts, between breaths, between moments of experience. Every music gap is a doorway. Advanced practitioners learn to recognize these music gaps and rest in them, without trying to fill them with thought or activity. They discover that these spaces, music, aren't empty, but full of potential, not absent, but pregnant with possibility. This is where the deepest music insights arise, where healing happens, where transformation occurs. When you attempt to enter that silence, you carry yourself along. This becomes the fundamental problem. Who is this you that seeks quiet? It's thought itself. To access the silence between thoughts, you must abandon the one who desires to reach it. Picture a computer program designed to erase itself the instant it recognizes its own existence. That's what consciousness, music, does when it tries to become thoughtless. Typically, the harder you try to quiet your mind, the more noise it produces. The reality is that a music self-aware system cannot completely shut itself down. This creates an interesting parallel with quantum mechanics. In quantum physics, the act of observation changes music, the thing being observed. Similarly, in consciousness, the act of music, trying to observe thoughtlessness, changes it. The very attention we bring to silence fills it with the presence of an observer. This isn't a flaw in the system. It's how consciousness works. But here's where it gets fascinating. Quantum physicists Shamusic have discovered that particles can exist in superposition, multiple states music simultaneously, until the moment of observation collapses them into a single state. Music, perhaps consciousness operates similarly. Maybe we exist in music, a superb position of thought and thoughtlessness, until the moment of self-observation collapses us, music, into one state or the other. This becomes the primary teaching of the thoughtless music state. You cannot force the mind to switch off. Instead, approach it like the art of visual illusions. You might possess the freedom to move in any direction, yet you remain trapped within your own concept of freedom. Cultivate the ability to perceive. Train your inner vision, and you'll develop the capacity music to recognize both illusions. The key isn't to fight the mind, music, but to understand its nature so deeply that you naturally transcend its limitations. What moments of letting go have transformed your relationship with your thoughts? Drop a comment, music, and let the community know about your breakthrough. Understanding the mind's nature requires recognizing that thoughts are music, not facts. They're simply electrochemical events in the brain, no more real than the images on a movie screen. Yet, we treat music them as if they're absolute truth, as if they define who we are. This identification with thinking creates most of our suffering. We become prisoners of our own mental chatter. But there's a deeper layer to this understanding. Not only are thoughts not music facts, but the thinker of thoughts is also not who you think you are. A sense of being a separate self, a solid entity, having thoughts is itself music, just another thought. When you look for the thinker, you can't find it. Music. There's just thinking happening with no central controller pulling the strings. This dissolution of the separate self is what mystics music throughout history have pointed toward. It's not that you disappear. It's that you discover you were never what you thought you. Music were in the first place. The boundaries between self and world, between inner and outer, between observer and observed reveal themselves to be conceptual constructs rather than fundamental realities. Consider how quantum physicists describe reality at the smallest scales. Particles exist in multiple states simultaneously until observed, then collapse music into a single state. Perhaps consciousness works similarly. In the space before thought crystallizes, music, infinite possibilities exist. The moment we observe or think about our experience, we collapse those possibilities into a single limited interpretation. This quantum-like nature of consciousness, Shamusic suggests that thoughtlessness isn't about eliminating thoughts, but about remaining in that space of infinite potential music before thoughts solidify into fixed ideas. This quantum music perspective on consciousness opens up revolutionary possibilities. If consciousness operates like a quantum field, then the act of observing our own mental states might be collapsing infinite possibilities into single fixed interpretations. What if instead of trying to control our thoughts, we learn to surf the quantum field of consciousness, music itself? Recent research in quantum biology has shown that quantum effects play a role in photosynthesis, music, bird navigation, and possibly even consciousness itself. Some share music. Scientists propose that the brain's microtubules, tiny structures within neurons, might be quantum computers processing information in ways that classical physics cannot explain. If this is true, then consciousness might be fundamentally quantum in nature, operating according to music, to principles that transcend ordinary logic. This quantum nature of consciousness, music, might explain why thoughtless states feel so expansive and limitless. When we're not music collapsing possibilities into fixed thoughts, we exist in a state of pure music potential. We become like Schrodinger's cat, simultaneously all possibilities until the moment of observation forces music us to choose one reality. Watch this video every morning this week to deepen your understanding of these concepts. Better yet, share it with someone who's been struggling with overthinking. When you spread these insights about consciousness, you're not just helping them, you're creating ripples of awareness that expand music, collective understanding, and strengthen your own grasp of these profound truths. There's something beautiful about how sharing knowledge of consciousness transforms both the giver and receiver. When you explain these concepts to someone else, you're forced to understand them more deeply yourself. The act of music teaching becomes a form of learning. The act of giving becomes a form of receiving. This isn't just metaphorical. It's how consciousness and music actually works. Neuroscience has discovered that explaining something to another person, music, activates different neural networks than simply understanding it yourself. The process of translation from your understanding to their understanding creates new neural pathways and deepens comprehension. This is why the greatest teachers often say they learn more from their students than they teach. But there's an even deeper principle at work here. When you share insights, music about consciousness, you're not just transmitting information. You're creating music, a field of shared awareness. Consciousness isn't trapped inside individual brains. It's more like a field that we all participate in. When you raise your level of awareness, you literally raise the level of consciousness in the field. This affects music, everyone, whether they realize it or not. The ancient Vedic texts speak of Akasha, the space element, music that pervades all existence. In this view, consciousness isn't produced by the music brain, but accessed through it. The brain is like a radio receiver, tuning into different frequencies. Music of consciousness. When you stabilize in thoughtless awareness, you tune music into the clearest frequency, the one that exists before all mental static. This field music understanding of consciousness explains why being around awakened individuals can trigger awakening in others. It's not just what they say or do. It's the same music, a quality of presence they embody. Their stabilized awareness creates a field that induces similar sing music states in others. This is why spiritual communities form around awakened teachers, why meditation groups often experience collective states of consciousness, how music, why certain places feel sacred. Understanding this quantum nature of consciousness opens the door to something, even music, more profound. Realizing that you are simultaneously music, the one observing reality, and the reality being observed. This fundamental recognition transforms everything about how you experience existence, music itself. This observer-observed paradox is perhaps the deepest mystery of consciousness. Music. When you look at a tree, where does the tree end, and your perception of it begin? When you observe your own thoughts, who is the observer, and what is being observed? When you experience awareness itself, who is aware of the awareness? These questions point, music, to a fundamental non-duality at the heart of existence. The apparent separation between observer and observed, between consciousness and its contents, music, between self and world, is revealed to be a conceptual overlay on a more fundamental unity. You are not separate from what you observe. You are the very capacity for observation itself. And music, this recognition doesn't come through thinking, but through a direct seeing that transcends the thinking mind. It's like suddenly realizing that you've been looking for your glasses while they were on your head all along. The very thing you've been seeking has been what you are all along. The thoughtless consciousness you've been pursuing is your own deepest nature, temporarily obscured by the very effort to find it. Her music, in this recognition, the whole spiritual search reveals itself as a Shan music, cosmic joke. You've been running around looking for water, while standing in her music, the middle of an ocean. You've been seeking enlightenment while being the very awareness, her music, in which the search appears. You've been trying to become thoughtless while being the space she music, in which all thoughts arise and dissolve. This is why the great sages often laugh when they hey music awaken. Not because anything is funny, but because the whole drama of seeking and finding, of being lost and becoming found, is revealed to be a play of consciousness, music, with itself. You are both the actor and the audience, the question and music, the answer, the seeker and the sought. When this recognition stabilizes, life becomes effortless, not because external circumstances always go your way, but because you're no longer fighting with what is. You're no longer trying to be somewhere else or someone else. You're no longer trying to have different thoughts, music or no thoughts. You simply are what you are. Thoughtless to music consciousness, appearing as the entire universe of experience. This is the ultimate paradox, music, and the ultimate resolution. In seeking to become thoughtless, you discover that you already are the thoughtless awareness, music, in which all thoughts appear. In trying to transcend the mind, you realize you are the sheer music space in which the mind arises. In attempting to find freedom, you recognize that you are the music freedom you seek. The pathless path leads you back to where you started. But now you know the sea music place for the first time. You are not a person who sometimes experiences thoughtless to music consciousness. You are thoughtless consciousness, temporarily appearing as a person. This shift her music in identity from the wave to the ocean, from the thought to the awareness, from the seeker to the he music sought is the ultimate flowering of understanding. And yet, even this understanding must be held lightly. The moment you grasp it as a concept, it becomes another thought. The moment you identify with it, her music as an attainment, it becomes another layer of the ego. The beauty of thoughtless consciousness and music is that it cannot be possessed, only embodied. It cannot be achieved, only recognized. It cannot be maintained, only surrendered to. This is why the path house music never ends and has never begun. Each moment offers the opportunity to recognize what you already are. Each breath provides a doorway into the space between thoughts. Each experience becomes a teaching about the nature of consciousness itself. The mind will continue shame music to create thoughts, but you no longer need to be enslaved by them. Emotions will continue to hear music arise, but you no longer need to be overwhelmed by them. The world will continue to unfold in its perfect chaos, but you no longer need to resist her music, its flow. You become like space itself, unborn, undying, unchanging, yet allowing all experiences to arise and pass away. Shim music within your infinite embrace. This is thoughtless consciousness, not the absence of thought, but the presence of that which remains when all thoughts, her music, come and go. In this space of infinite possibility, you discover that you are both nothing and everything, neither something nor nothing, beyond all categories, yet including all experiences. Her music, you are the mystery that cannot be solved, the question that needs no answer, the silence that speaks louder than words. This is your true music nature, your original face, your deepest identity. It has never been lost and can never be found. It has never been absent and can never be present. It simply is what you are before the first thought and after the ain music last, in the space between breaths and in the heart of every moment. Welcome home. Yet even in this homecoming, there's a subtle trap waiting. The moment hey music, you think you've arrived at thoughtless consciousness, you've already left it. The moment music, you congratulate yourself on achieving enlightenment, you've fallen back into the very mental activity. Shame music, you sought to transcend. This is why traditional teachings often speak of beginner's mind, maintaining her music, the fresh open awareness of someone encountering truth for the first time, free from the weight of spiritual achievement. The Zen master Hangpo taught your everyday mind that Shay music is the way. This points to something crucial. Thoughtless consciousness isn't her music, a special state you need to cultivate or maintain. It's the natural condition of awareness. When it's not caught up in its own self-referential loops, it's as natural music as breathing, as simple as seeing, as ordinary as being alive. But here's where modern spiritual seekers often go astray. They turn thoughtless consciousness into another project, another goal to achieve. They create elaborate practices, hymn music, complex theories, and sophisticated techniques to reach something that is already present. It's like trying music to catch your own shadow or seeking darkness with a flashlight. The very effort defeats itself. This leads us to what we he music might call the spiritual materialism trap. We approach consciousness with some music, the same acquisitive mindset we use to accumulate material possessions. We want music to get enlightenment, to achieve thoughtlessness, to attain awakening. But consciousness, music cannot be possessed, because you are consciousness. You cannot achieve what you already are. You cannot attain your own nature. The great Indian sage Nisargadatta Maharaj often said, "You are not what you think you are. You are not even the one who thinks." This isn't a philosophical statement to be understood intellectually. It's a direct pointing to your immediate experience. Right now, as you read these words, there is awareness present. This awareness is not thinking. Thoughts are appearing in it. This awareness is not feeling. Emotions are arising and passing within music. This awareness is not experiencing. All experiences are happening within its open space. This recognition leads to what mystics call the great reversal. Instead of shame music, consciousness being something you have, you recognize that you are something consciousness shame music has. Instead of awareness being your possession, you discover that you are awareness expressing itself as a temporary human experience. Instead of seeking thoughtless consciousness, you realize you are thoughtless consciousness playing at being a seeker. But this reversal isn't just a hair music conceptual shift. It's a complete revolution in how you relate to existence. When you recognize yourself as awareness itself, the sea music entire structure of seeking collapses. There's no longer anywhere to go, because you've discovered you are the destination. There's no longer anything to achieve. Sham music, because you are the achievement. There's no longer anything to understand, because you are understanding music itself. This doesn't mean the human experience disappears. Thoughts still arise. Emotions still flow. The body still functions, and life still unfolds with all its music, joys and challenges. But the one who was previously identified with these hey music experiences, the ego, the separate self, the thinker of thoughts, is seen to be a mirage, a case of show music, mistaken identity. It's like suddenly realizing you've been watching a movie and mistaking yourself for one of the characters on screen. The movie continues playing. The characters' music continue their drama, but you're no longer lost in the illusion. You remember you are the screen on which all the action appears, unchanging, unaffected. yet intimately present as he music, the very space in which everything unfolds. This screen, like quality of consciousness hack, music explains why awakened beings can remain peaceful in the midst of chaos, compassionate in the face of cruelty, and joyful share music despite suffering. They haven't become indifferent to life. They've recognized their true nature as the space in which all of life appears. Her music, the screen, isn't indifferent to the movie. It simply isn't confused about what it is. From this recognition, true compassion naturally arises. Not the compassion of the ego, trying to be good or spiritual, but the spontaneous compassion of consciousness, recognizing itself as music in all beings. When you see through the illusion of separation, you realize that helping others is literally helping yourself. Not because of some cosmic reward system, but because others are not other. They are the same consciousness, appearing as different forms. This is why sharing these insights creates such powerful ripples. A music. When you point another person toward their true nature, you're not giving them something they, music, don't have. You're helping them recognize what they already are. The recognition in them strengthens the Sheng music recognition in you. Not because you're separate beings helping each other, but because recognition is recognizing itself. The ancient Upanishads contain a beautiful phrase, Tatami. Thou art that. This isn't a philosophical statement, but a direct recognition. Her music, you are that which you seek. You are that which you have always been. You are that which can never be lost and never be found, because it is what you are. Yet even this music recognition must be held without grasping. The moment you try to hold on to the experience of being that, you've created a new subtle form of seeking. The moment you identify with being to music awakened, you've created a new, more sophisticated form of ego. The beauty of true recognition is that it doesn't need to be maintained. Her music, it maintains itself. It doesn't need to be protected. It is the Sheng music protection. It doesn't need to be preserved. It is preservation itself. This is why genuine awakening often appears so ordinary. The awakened person doesn't glow with he music, supernatural light, or float above the ground. They simply live with an effortless naturalness that comes from no longer fighting with reality. They've music stopped trying to be someone else, somewhere else, or someone ser music else. They've relaxed into what they are, where they are, when they music are. But this ordinariness can be deceptive. What appears ordinary to the mind is actually extraordinary beyond music measure. To live without the constant burden of self-improvement, without the endless project of becoming someone better, without the exhausting music effort of maintaining an image. This is the most radical freedom possible. It's so radical that the mind often overlooks music it, searching instead for something more dramatic, more impressive, more spiritual. The Taoist concept of Wui, effortless action, points to this same quality. When you're no longer fighting with your nature, action becomes spontaneous and appropriate. her music. You don't have to think about what to do. You simply respond from the clarity of the moment. This isn't passivity or indifference. Her music. It's the most intelligent and efficient way to live. Modern neuroscience is beginning to validate what mystics have always known. Studies of advanced meditators' music show decreased activity in the brain's default mode network. The neural circuits associated with self-referential thinking and the sense of music being a separate self. These studies suggest that what we call enlightenment, music, might be the brain's natural state when it's not caught up in self-preoccupation. But we must be careful not to reduce music consciousness to brain states. The brain might be the instrument through which consciousness expresses itself, but it's not the source of consciousness any more than a radio is the source of radio waves. The radio can be tuned to hear music, different frequencies, and different brain states might correspond to different frequencies of consciousness. But the music field of consciousness itself remains mysteriously beyond the physical. This music mystery is not a problem to be solved, but a wonder to be appreciated. The fact that consciousness exists at all, that music, there is something, it's like to be you reading these words right now, is perhaps Hasheru music, most astonishing fact in the universe. No amount of scientific explanation, music can diminish this wonder. If anything, the more we learn about the complexity of consciousness, the more mysterious music it becomes. In quantum physics, there's music, a principle called complementarity, the idea that objects have pairs of music properties that cannot be measured simultaneously. The more precisely you measure one property, the less precisely music you can know the other. Perhaps consciousness works similarly. The more you try to analyze it, the more its essence slips away. The more you try music to understand it, the more mysterious it becomes. This might explain why direct experience is emphasized over intellectual understanding music in spiritual traditions. Not because thinking is bad, but because the nature of consciousness can only be known by being it, not by thinking about it. You can study water's chemical composition, but to know water, you must drink it. You can analyze consciousness endlessly, music, but to know consciousness, you must be it, which fortunately you already are. The journey of awakening then is not about acquiring something new, but about releasing what was never yours to begin with. It's about letting go of the effort to be someone other than who you are, to be somewhere other than where you are, to be in some time other than now. It's about relaxing so completely into your own nature that the very idea of being anything else becomes absurd. This relaxation is not collapse or defeat. It's the ultimate victory. You've won the war by realizing there was never anyone to fight. You've solved the problem by recognizing there was never a problem to solve. You found yourself by giving up the search for yourself. You've become free by accepting that you were never bound. And in this freedom, life becomes music, play, not trivial play, but the cosmic play of consciousness with itself. Every experience music becomes part of this play. Joy and sorrow, birth and death, seeking and finding, knowing and not knowing. You are simultaneously the playwright, the actor, the audience, and the stage on which the entire drama unfolds. This is the final recognition. You are not in the universe. The universe is in you. You are not having experiences. You are music, the experience having itself. You are not seeking truth. You are truth, she music, seeking itself. You are not trying to become conscious. You are consciousness, he music itself, pretending to become conscious for the sheer joy of remembering what you are. Welcome home, indeed. Welcome to what you have always been. What you could never not be. What is reading these very words right now? Welcome to the thoughtless consciousness and music. That is your birthright, your nature, your very self. The search is over not because you found what you were looking for, but because you realized you are what you were looking for. The pathless music, a path, leads you full circle back to the beginning, where you know yourself for the first time. And in this knowing, which is not a knowing, but a being, the greatest paradox resolves, music itself. To be thoughtless, you must think no thoughts. To think no music thoughts, you must be thoughtless. And to be thoughtless, you must recognize that you already are. Watch this video every morning this week to deepen your understanding of these concepts. Better yet, share it with someone who's music been struggling with overthinking. When you spread these insights about consciousness, you're not just helping them. You're creating ripples of awareness to music that expand collective understanding and strengthen your own grasp of these music profound truths. Understanding this quantum nature of consciousness opens the door to something even more music profound. Realizing that you are simultaneously the one observing reality and the reality music being observed. This fundamental recognition transforms everything about how you experience existence itself.